Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Designing Your Professional Future. From both Anna and myself, we just want to say thank you. Thank you for joining us. Coming back for week number 2, we're happy to see you. So last week we did a lot of individual work. We focused on self-assessment, and this week we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to ask you to learn from each other, learn from some of the experiences and exercises that we have planned for tonight. So with that, we'll be asking for a bit of audience participation. And Anna and I both realize it is 5:30 on a Wednesday in July. We're tired, we get it, but in the spirit of community and as a way to connect with each other, we just ask that if you would, if you feel comfortable, we would love it if you could turn on your cameras just so that we can sort of engage and connect during this time together this evening. All right, thank you.
Okay, so last week when we kicked off our session, we really started to focus on this idea of a mindset shift. And specifically in life design, we talked about reframing, or this concept of taking all those old dysfunctional beliefs that we have about building a professional future or designing a life, turning them on their heads and reframing them. And so for today, what we thought we'd kick off with was a bit of a reframe on one specific dysfunctional belief. And that is the dysfunctional belief that in order to have a good work life, I need to go for it and really shoot for the moon. The reframe of that, or the mindset we want to get into, is the secret to good enough for now is to have a bias to action, but to set the bar low, clear it, and then do it again and again. And so you may be wondering, why are we kicking off our first session by telling you not to shoot for the moon, don't aim high, aim really, really low? It might seem a little bit counterintuitive, but in fact, it's very in line with the structure and the principles of life design, of coaching, and of design thinking. And that is that these processes are extremely iterative. So they leave a lot of room for error, for failure, for pivoting, for doing something differently, for shifting the way we approach things. But in order to allow that space and that flexibility to pivot, we need to set the bar low so that we can clear the bar, reassess, decide what needs to get thrown out, changed over, and then set a new bar. The problem when we set the bar too high is that we usually have a lot of investment, whether it's emotional investment, mental investment, perhaps financial investment. And so when we set the bar really high, that means the stakes are higher and it's a little bit harder to pull out. It's harder to get unstuck. And so when we set the bar low, it allows that space for experimentation. And so we want to reframe this, especially as we move from self-assessment ideation into action today, because we really want to approach this from an experimental mindset. And we'll go a little bit more into this mindset. But again, just thinking of this reframe as a really liberating way to experience life and to build a way forward. And so for today, as I just mentioned, our first session was really about self-knowing and self-understanding, self-empathy, assessment. We started that agenda building. We took that time between this week and last week to really ideate, come up with those wild ideas of, okay, now I understand myself. Now, how could things look? And so today is where we really start to focus on action planning. And I'll go into this a little bit later, but what's going to be really unique about this is, again, we're combining coaching with life design. And so coaching in the action planning segment of coaching is a bit more structured. It's pretty tangible. It's going to be pretty concrete, which is really beneficial. And we're going to do this by overlaying these ideals and these kind of mindset shifts of design thinking in prototyping and testing. So we believe that by providing you with the mindset of prototyping and testing and then taking action in coaching, this is the kind of the unique value that Carly and I are bringing to you today. And so as a reminder, we are approaching everything today, just like we did on last Wednesday, as curious designers. And with this curious designer mindset, remember, there's still those life design principles that we're following also. So embedded in this curious designer is this idea of grit rooted in purpose, this commitment to relentless iteration, and just an overall kind of dedication to experimentation and to, choosing the next best step. And so before we go into this action step and a little bit about the prototyping testing mindset that we're going to use and overlay over these coaching steps, what we wanted to do is take a few minutes and really look at this ideation exercise that you had the chance to work on. So I am going to open it up first and just ask if anybody is brave enough to share. I want to ask first, tell me about the process of this. Is there anything about your process of completing this 5 to 7 minute exercise that really stuck out to you, whether it was how you did it or some of the findings that you had once you completed it? Does anybody want to, you can just unmute yourselves. You don't have to even raise your hand, just kind of chime in. Thank you for that. And you've actually highlighted a really important point that ideation takes a lot of practice. And so when we give you these tools, the hope is that you can repeat them, return to them over and over again, and it gets a little bit easier. And so as we kind of continue to mention, the process of life design or coaching, we can give you the hard and fast rules and the steps, but actually being able to let yourself go, not to self-censor, not to judge, to have that free flow of ideas in that low risk environment is a lot easier said than done. And it actually does require doing it to kind of practice those skills. So thank you for sharing that. So with the point of this exercise is really just to give you this space to not to censor, not to judge, come up with as many ideas, see what comes out, see what themes emerge. It's not to spit out necessarily a next step, but rather just shine some light on, okay, here are a couple things that maybe I could cobble them together, or maybe I could try to experiment with one of these things. So it's really a little bit of self-assessment combined with a precursor to action. And so this is one of many, many different types of ideation exercises that we can do in life design, just to, again, I loved how you said, lubricate the brain and just really get yourself thinking in this mindset. So I think what's really important to understand is that, there are two really important outcomes of ideation exercises like this that allow us to suspend judgment. Number one, it gives us the license to be totally creative. And so when we allow ourselves to be truly creative, we can stumble upon ideas that maybe aren't that practical, maybe won't work in the end, but they could shine a light on some things that maybe are priorities for us, or strengths or weaknesses of ours that maybe we could, can follow. So they give us kind of threads to follow. Additionally, as I said before, I think what's really important about ideation is that the act of practicing ideation, aside from whatever outcomes you get from each exercise, the act of practicing ideation really helps us to be able to practice exploring in a low risk environment. And so when we always say, low risk, go for it, bias to action, get off the bench and start doing something. This is an actual mind mapping is a perfect way to take a very small zero risk in order to explore and experiment with some potential routes. So great job doing that. Hopefully you have a little bit more of information to go off of, or at least some things that you'd like to try in the future, some ideas you can carry into your action planning when Carly kind of takes us through those exercises. So before we move on to coaching and talk a little bit about prototyping and testing and the mindset we're going to have through this coaching action exercise set that we're going to do, I did want to show a small clip from a TED Talk. So this is a TED Talk that you may have seen before. I'm going to show a clip now. We'll also show a clip at the end, but it's a TED Talk called Why Some of Us Don't Have One True Calling. And it's this TED Talk on the multi-potentialite concept. Multi-potentialites are people who have many creative outlets and creative pursuits. And that's all I'm going to do to set it up. We're going to watch the first 3 minutes. All you have to do is sit back, relax. We'll quickly reflect, and then we'll kind of move on to prototyping and testing in that mindset. Okay, so I love this concept. While I love the whole multi-potentialite concept, this is not to assume that any of us have to be or should be or are going to find out that we are multi-potentialites with many conflicting interests. The reason why I bring this up is because I think that important point to highlight in that clip is that when we feel like we are abnormal or counterculture, because we've been told so many times that career or life or professional futures look a certain way. And I think it's really important, especially as we start to translate that self-knowing, because we, in those beginning stages, self-empathy, self-assessment, we're like, I got it. I know what matters to me. I know what I care about. I know when I feel moments of flow. I know how to be aligned. And then we start to get into that action planning, that ideation, and we start to maybe see ourselves self-limit. And that happens happens naturally because there's so many assumptions that we bring to the table, things we've been told, things we've been shown, ways that we think life has to look. And so the reason why I bring this clip up is because I think it's important as we go through the action stages to start to question some of those assumptions, or at least recognize some of those assumptions as we start to build out how we're going to experiment moving forward. And the more that we can question these assumptions, the more we can keep ourselves in check and stay aligned with that person that we identified in that self-empathy stage. So again, we'll show another clip of this at the end of the talk, or at the end of our session together, but I just like to kick it off with that. And it's an excellent talk if you haven't gotten to watch the whole thing. So now moving on, here's what our task is for today. Approach the coaching step of action, right? To approach this action step, goal setting, action planning, creating sustainable change through these really great concrete exercises that Carly is going to take us through. And our unique approach to this is going to be overlaying this prototyping testing mindset, which is something that is perhaps maybe a little bit tougher to grasp. So I'm going to explain kind of where it comes from and what consists of a prototyping testing mindset, so we can hopefully look at this action step through the lens of prototyping and testing. And so here's what prototyping and testing is in design thinking. So let's separate this from life design for a minute, just so I can explain. So when we get to prototyping and testing, this is the stage of design thinking where we're starting to take those solutions that we developed in ideation, and we start to put them in a form that we can test. So what this means is, if I were somebody who said, okay, we need a way to fix transportation in the city, and I said, we need an app for this. And so through ideation, we came up with all these really creative ways to make an app. So if I got to the prototyping stage, would I be hiring programmers and designers and a whole team of people to invest all this time and money in building an app? Not yet. Prototyping is about what are the fewest number of materials that I need, the fewest resources that I need to be able to get some semblance of this solution in writing or in a visual, to be able to test it on my audience. So I might draw a picture of an app and the different screens that you would see, or the different user interfaces. I might develop something really quickly that I can build in 20 minutes online, just really super fast, really rough around the edges, just to be able to get feedback. So as you can see in the design thinking context, when we're talking about product development, we're talking about rapid and rough, 20 minutes tops to create a prototype. It's really rough around the edges. It doesn't take any money, any time to make. That makes it really low risk. We're not investing our life savings into building an app that won't work. We're going to figure out now what works and doesn't. So in that sense, prototyping and testing are learning tools. They're by no means polished solutions. They are not seen as outcomes or ends. They're seen as means. And what's really great about prototyping in any context is it helps us to think through building. So again, rather than sit on that bench and think about our next step, we have that bias to action. We're starting to put something together, and through using our hands and creating visuals, we're actually thinking about our solution and finding holes in our solution as we build it. And then finally, it gives us this beautiful opportunity to, what I like to call the baby ugly. I heard this once. I really like it for the shock value. But what it means is that we're able to be honest with ourselves. And if we really loved this idea of an app moving forward, we may say, oh my gosh, this isn't working. We've got to admit our baby's ugly. It's not going to work. Let's throw it out. But guess what? Not much is lost because it was a prototype. So this is what prototyping and testing look like in life design. It takes a lot of self-control. It takes a lot of embracing failure. It's tough mentally more than it is in practice, like to actually build and throw out a prototype, right? That's pretty easy to do. But to mentally wrap your head around letting go of ideas, moving in new directions, that's a tough thing for us. In life design, it's even tougher because it's really personal. And so if we had our heart set on, you know what, through ideation, I came up with this great new life direction. I'm going to experiment. I'm moving industries. I think it's going to work. I'm just going to prototype it real quick to make sure, and then I'm going to move forward. What if you have a prototyping experience? So in life design, that could be having a conversation with somebody in that industry. Maybe it's about shadowing somebody for a day. Maybe it's about taking on an apprenticeship. So before we dump our life savings into a business, or we up and quit our jobs without a plan, how can we start to practice? Okay, experiment. What would this look like? But the tough thing is that when we get our heart set on something, to admit, oh, I thought I would like this, and through talking to this person, this is not at all what I thought. Admitting that and shifting directions is actually quite difficult in practice. So the mindset of prototyping and testing is difficult, but if we can start to embrace it and embrace failure and embrace new information that can lead us in the right direction, it can be really effective. So our goal for today is to take these really concrete steps in the coaching exercise that Carly's going to take you through, but remembering that prototyping and testing mindset. Let's think of our action plan as a way to test out what could work, what could not, and let's be prepared to really honestly assess the information that we receive and find a new direction. So that's our task for today.
Thanks, Anna. I think when I first learned about prototyping and how you can apply that to your own life and you don't have to fully commit to something for the next 25 years, it felt like a very freeing idea. So I absolutely love that. Thank you. So as Anna mentioned, last week, we introduced life design and the coaching processes, and we talked about how they overlap, how they work together, and move us toward this personal and professional growth. This week, we're really going to focus on the tools and activities in our living lab that are moving us sort of out of that ideation, idea creation, awareness stage in coaching. So moving us out of that and into designing and deciding on goals, where are we going, and actions, the steps that we're going to take in order to make those goals a reality. So really exploring what's important to us, what we're going to do, how we're going to get there, and then how we're going to keep ourselves accountable to keep that growth and change going long term. So coaching in itself is a fully outcome-based process. The action step always has to be there. It's incredibly important. And the action stage is incredibly important because it forces us to identify and commit to what's our goal, what's important to us, and what are we committing to? What am I doing for the next day, week, month? What are those small steps and checkpoints that are going to move me from where I am now into my next role, into starting my business, into a career change, whatever that big goal is, the action stage moves us there. So like I said, coaching is action-based. It's movement toward action. Without that action item, without those goals, it's you and your friend talking about your ideas. It's Ann and I sitting here chatting and, having brunch together, right? It's the action stage that makes coaching powerful and moves us forward. So an example of sort of the action stage is if your big goal, right? And we'll go through this, creating these. If your big goal is that you are currently in a sales role, but you're really interested in moving into marketing, right? So that's the goal. In 1 year, I'm going to be a marketing associate. I'm going to be an assistant director of marketing. So big goal. What are the action steps? What's the action planning? What are the steps you need to take in the next week, month, year, 3 months, 6 months? They're going to move you toward that big goal. So is it, reviewing marketing job descriptions and seeing where your skills overlap? Is it finding someone in your network that's in the marketing field and holding an informational interview with them? Again, if you're not familiar, information interviews are just an informal conversation that you have with someone who's working in the field that's of interest to you. So it's not a formal interview where you're asking for a job. It's really a research tool that you reach out to this person and sort of ask them what their role is like, ask them what their day is like, so that you can better understand if it's a good fit for you. And it's actually a great example of prototyping in the career field. So the action phase of coaching is really broken down into 3 steps. 1, goal setting. So what's the big piece? What do you want to be working on, right? What do I want to do? Action planning. What will I do? What can I commit to next week, next month, the next 3 months that will move me toward that big goal, right? We understand that big goals, New Year's resolutions, they don't really stick around. So you got to sort of break them down into doable, realistic steps in order to increasing the possibility that you can accomplish them. And finally, accountability. So what are you going to do? What are the steps you're going to take to get there? And how are you going to keep that going? How are you going to make this sustainable growth? What accountability structures do you use so that you're continually working toward that goal? So just looking quickly at these 3 steps, I'm going to look at the camera here. Hopefully we've got some cameras on. How many of you have gone through goal setting exercises in the past? If you're with Hopkins, I bet you have. Anyone? Go ahead and raise those hands. Am I the only one? Anna, have you done? I bet you have. All right, I've got one. There we go.
Very long time ago. Sorry, it was muted.
No, you're fine. That's the tagline of 2020 and 2021. You're on mute. So goal setting is, if you're not familiar, goal setting is merely the ability to develop and maintain an effective development plan, right? Again, we talked about this last week. It's taking these ideas that are in our head. Oh, I really want to move into a marketing field, sort of overcoming the mental obstacles, the inner critic that's in there. Well, I can't do that. I don't have any experience in it. I don't have the right education, right? So it's avoiding those mental obstacles, writing down those goals on a piece of paper, and it becomes a living document that you work on, that evolves, that you create, that sort of takes it out of your head and brings it into real life. So in order for you to have the highest likelihood that you are going to accomplish those goals, you want them to be meaningful, right? You want them to be important to you, specific, measured. So how will you know you're making progress on them? Again, interesting, meaningful to you, and they have to be on a timeline, right? And so when we're thinking about goals and we're creating a goal worksheet, which is what we're going to do tonight, you might have a couple different timelines, right? So you might say, I want to make this career change in 1 year. Okay, so that's timeline 1. In order to do that, I am going to review job descriptions and see where my skills cross over by September 1st. And I'm gonna schedule one informational interview by October 1st, right? So you have your big timeline and then these small steps along the way, right? They act as check-ins. Finally, I know that we mentioned this last week, but again, these goal worksheets are important, and something that I always have on mine are connection. All right. So you're probably not going to see that in a lot of goal worksheets you do, but it's so important that we are co-creating with other people. Our capacity grows, our effectiveness grows, our IQ is higher when we are connected with others. And so on every goal worksheet I go through these steps. Do I have everything? Do I have my timelines? And who can I connect with? Who can I bounce ideas off of? Who can I use as an accountability partner, right? So who is a big piece of it? So while the research on goal setting spans far and wide, my friends, I really love Fogg's behavioral model because I think it provides some great suggestions for behavior modification and change. So Fogg's behavioral model offers 5 tips and tricks for creating our goals. 1, keep your goals small. Again, how many of you were actually doing your New Year's resolutions on January 3rd? Not me. I quit it by the next day. Not a 1. So the goals are just too big, right? We need to break them down, make them smaller. Fogg's behavioral model calls them micro goals, small, doable goals, like Anna said, that keep the bar low, that you can reach and achieve, because that keeps the momentum going. The second takeaway is something called habit stacking. Has anybody heard of this before? So habit stacking is taking a new habit that you want to develop and doing it immediately after a habit you already have, right? So if you were to say, you know what, I want to start meditating for 5 minutes a day. So if you were to say, you know, maybe I'll do it in the evening, maybe I'll do it in the afternoon, maybe I'll do it in the morning, it's unlikely you're still going to be doing that long term. But if you say every morning I have a cup of coffee and then I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes, stacking the habit on top of another one increases the likelihood that you will be doing that long term. Okay. The third takeaway is tracking. So this is in line with the guidelines for SMART goals. It's important to write down, mark down, tally, keep track of your progress. And you want to make sure that the way that you're tracking is simple and easy, right? So if you said, you know what, I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes and then I'm going to journal about it. Those are 2 new habits. You're not going to do that. So instead, if you say, I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes and I'm just going to mark it down that I've done it, it increases the likelihood that you'll be doing that long term. The next one is hold steady. So, you know, it's hard to think about those small micro goals to begin with. It's even harder to stay small, but the research shows that if you can continue doing those small micro habits for 2 weeks and then only increase by 10%, increases the likelihood of you being successful. And finally, accountability. We talked about this. Having accountability structures in place increases the likelihood that you'll be doing this long term. So whatever works for you, you want to make sure that your accountability structures are something you're comfortable with. Is it an alarm on your phone? Is it Post-its on your screen? Is it an accountability partner? It's just finding accountability structures that work for you. So the next phase is action planning. So you've come up with these large goals, you know what you want to do, you know where you're headed. Creating an action plan is really the next iteration of your goal setting worksheet. It's taking those large goals that you've set for yourself and planning daily, weekly actions that you will use in order to complete them. So your action plan is tied to your larger goals, but it's really a written commitment of what you will do. And like your goal setting worksheet provides a living document that you can update, track, and sort of keep reference as to what your goals are and how it's going. Okie dokie. So what I would like, and again, Anna's very comfortable with silence. I am not comfortable with silence. So if you guys could really just chime in, I would love it. What we'll be doing now is moving to our living lab, and we'll be doing a couple exercises, creating our goal setting worksheet, and I'll be asking for your feedback. So step one, if you could get out a piece of paper and a pencil, we'll go ahead and get started. I see some heads looking up. We'll keep it going. Everybody have what they need? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask you a series of questions, and you're going to write your answers down your page. And what our outcome is going to be is a goal setting worksheet. Okay. I ask that as we do this, you choose one goal that's important to you. I know we have a lot of things we want to do, but choose one goal, one professional goal that you would like to achieve, and we'll focus on that for this assignment. Okay, so question number one, top middle of your page. This is the big one, right? Write down one professional goal that you're interested in working on. You could summarize it. I'll give you 1 minute to write that down. Those action steps now. Take that big goal, 3 smaller goals you have that are tied to your bigger goal. Okay, so 3 smaller goals you have that will aid you in achieving your main goal. And I'll give you till 6:13. My clock says 6:11. All right, let me hear it. What are some examples of 3 action steps or smaller goals you have that are tied to your larger goal? We're just starting here. Ann and I always say, do it messy, get it out there, get it out of here, and you're on your way. You signed up for this class, so you're definitely on your way. Anyone else want to share some of their action steps? Great, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to keep it moving here. Question number 3, time frame for completion, right? When we do our goal, we always have to have a time frame for them. And so when I say time frame, put a time frame on that big goal, of course, when you want to complete that, and then obviously checkpoints. So add a time frame for your 3 action steps, your 3 smaller goals as well. We'll take about a minute on that. Yeah. All right, I see some heads lifting up. We're going to go on to our next one. My favorite question, who can you connect with as you're working on this goal? Is there anyone in your life? Is there anyone in your professional life that you could connect with as you are reaching out for informational interviews, as you are looking for a safe person to practice the public speaking on? So go ahead and write their names right down. We'll be sharing them, but it's an important part of the goal setting worksheet. So about 30 seconds for that. And then moving right into the next one. How will you keep yourself accountable, right? You've got your big plan, your big goal. There's a lot happening. How will you keep yourself accountable? What structures, concrete structures, will you put in place to make sure that the work that you're doing is continuing? When you run into an obstacle, how do you overcome it? What accountability structures are there for support and check-in? And I'm going to ask when you're ready for some people to share out on this one, because I love to hear what people do to keep themselves accountable. I've heard somebody told me about one time about a rubber band on their wrist, and whenever they looked at it, it reminded them to go and do their 10-minute walk. So there's a lot of really cool ones out there that I've heard. So people that you connect with and accountability structures. How are you going to keep yourself accountable? That's great, Melon. Thank you. In coaching, there's a competency called designing actions in the moment, and it's just do it now. And so when you're in the conversation with the coach would say, Madeline, get out your calendar. Let's put those dates on the calendar right now. So in that conversation, taking it out of here and saying, you know, I will do it. Let's do it right now. And so making it real. Thank you. It's helpful. Okay, next one. Keep it moving here. And this is sort of an ongoing one. How will you know when you've been successful? What are your indicators of success? This is sort of a visioning question. So to think, okay, when I have been, is it when I've been accepted to graduate school? What will that look like? How will that feel? And sort of exploring that, that process and thinking of what it will be like and just sort of jotting that down. So what are your indicators of success? How will you know when you've been successful? All right. So there is another piece of this, but in the interest of time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send it out to you, but I'll very quickly talk you through it. Basically, what you do is you take your goal setting worksheet that you've just created, flip it over, go through and list out 10 things that you did yesterday or 10 things that you did today. Circle them if they are connected to your goal. Okay. So again, I will send this activity out to you after our class today. And so the goal of this is really to see how those small individual daily actions working together move you toward that large goal. And if you're not doing anything, you know, during the week, during the month, that is moving you toward that goal, to intentionally start making lists so that you're including those action steps in your daily schedule. So I'll send that out to you. Okay, well, thank you all so much for working on that with me. I love a good worksheet. I love a good goal setting worksheet. So I appreciate your involvement. So that leads us to now. You came, you saw, you conquered this. And I just want to celebrate the work that you're doing, the fact that you signed up for this course. And before we share out on our experiences, I just want to talk about the importance of acknowledging what we're doing, acknowledging the work that we're doing, the success we're having as an important piece of the change growth puzzle. The coaching process, like I said, is framed by a set of competencies that guide the work we do as coaches. And one of those is managing accountability. A big piece of managing accountability is acknowledging our success, acknowledging our growth. And a lot of times I think we look for that feedback, that positive feedback from coworkers, from a supervisor, partner, but it really starts with ourselves. So finding specific ways to recognize the work that we're doing, sort of reflect on the path that's taken to get here. And that motivates ongoing growth. It motivates signing up for more classes like this one. So if we can be reflective about that, think about sort of the people that have been involved in that process, the barriers that we run into. The next time we run into those barriers, we can more efficiently get over them. We've been through it before, we've thought about it. So finally, a number of studies have shown that taking the time to acknowledge the work that you're doing, celebrating your success, leads to improved physical health. We have better coping strategies. We're less stressed and overwhelmingly more optimistic. That works for me. I'm ready to do it. So I just want to do one quick check-in before we move on today and say, what are you proud of? What are you walking away thinking about, working on, noodling about, and what are you proud of? So if I could have a couple people share, it'd be great. That's great. 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 I'm going to pass it off to Anna now, but before I do, again, I just want to say thank you to all of you for being vulnerable, sharing this information with us today, and keeping the community going. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Carly. Those exercises are so valuable. We've gone through them before. I got to actually do them today, and I really loved it. So thank you so much. And I, want to just spend a few minutes. We're going to kind of wrap it up here, but I think what's really cool to kind of talk about is the overlap between sustaining, when we're talking about sustaining change. How do we do this long term? How do we keep this going after this session is over? I think it's important to talk about, from a coaching perspective, those accountability measures are huge factors in making sure that we are sustaining this change. But I also think, when we talk about from a design, life design perspective, there's this idea of failure immunity. And so I think what we often don't talk about in life design, and I did touch on this briefly earlier in the presentation, but something that we have to kind of recognize is that it can take a toll on us. It can be pretty taxing. We can say, okay, well, all you've got to do is prototype and shift and throw out the old model and start again and love failure because it's going to teach you. That can be a really tough thing to do, especially when it's tied to our personal lives and our own life design, our professional futures. And so how do we get around this then? And so I think in addition to creating accountability measures, when we pull in that life design perspective, what we're talking about is developing this failure immunity, this immunity to failure. And so how do we do that? Well, the first thing, and what they say is the vaccine to ensure failure immunity, is a mindset shift, but that's easier said than done. And we've talked about different ways to shift our mindsets this entire kind of 2 sessions, but what is it that we can really start to work on? Number one, thinking through how we can look at life design and coaching as a process, not an outcome, is so important. And so the idea of this kind of tool set we've given you is not, okay, you work for a few months, you have this great solution, you have this new path, and then we move forward and then we leave life design and coaching behind us. The goal of life design and coaching is actually to constantly design our lives, constantly engage in coaching. That is the outcome. The outcome is a commitment to constantly working on it. And that can help us to kind of reframe failure for the future. And then, so the other thing in developing this mindset, sorry, is somebody's mic on? Just if you wouldn't mind just checking muting yourself, because I am hearing it. I don't know if people can hear me, but it was echoing back. I just want to make sure people can hear. Thank you. So developing this failure immunity is really important. And I know that you may have heard how we've turned into human doings and not human beings. And so when we really start to embrace taking failure as just new information and practicing it through life design, we move from being to becoming. And then we become and we try something else on. We start doing again, and then we become something different. And so there's this constant kind of cyclical process that we're going through. And so how do we practice failure immunity? How do we engage in this mindset shift? The key way that we do this is just by doing it, just by going through the process. The beautiful thing about coaching and life design is that by going through it, by doing the exercises in themselves are training to think differently. And so by engaging these exercises we provided for you and re-engaging with these tools, our goal for you is that you can constantly be involved in this process, and therefore failure and starting over and revamping can become just parts of the cycle and not be so taxing emotionally and mentally. So something to strive for, but something to keep into account or take into account when we were talking about sustaining change, which can be a really challenging thing. And so what I wanted to do now was we're just going to wrap up with a quick clip from that same TED Talk. I'm going to show you the end of that TED Talk, briefly show you some tools that we want you to take with you, some other opportunities that we want you to leave with today, and then kind of wrap it up, open up for questions. So I'm going to just share my screen. This is about a 2-minute clip. So just, again, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Okay, so again, didn't really want to highlight multi-potentialite versus specialist, even though I think it's really fascinating. But for the purposes of our session today, I think the bottom line is, embracing that inner wiring, really staying true to who we are so that we can stay aligned as we move through this process is so important. And so if you take anything away from the past 2 sessions, I hope that it is understanding that combined approach of, 1, knowing yourselves, constantly getting to know yourself over and over again, self-assessing, self-empathizing, combined with this idea that where you have a bias to action, we're constantly testing, experimenting, creating new goals, and then taking action. That combined approach can really help us not only to stay aligned, but also to lead to a fulfilling, impact-driven life. And so our hope is that we've been able to kind of shine light on those two different really important facets of both coaching and life design that'll help you to pave your next steps forward. And so when we leave you today, we both wanted to highlight some of the exercises as a reminder of what we've worked through over the past 2 sessions. So again, these are exercises we hope you can revisit over and over. We also want to remind you that, of course, that mindset shift, that commitment to iteration, curiosity, experimentation is just as important as these tangible, concrete tools. And then finally, we wanted to give you another set of tools. A lot of these were referenced during the past 2 sessions, but some really great resources to check out. The full TED Talk is linked there, so we'll make sure to send this out to you. And also we included a life crafting exercise. It takes about 20 minutes. It wasn't used or referenced during our session, but it could be something really interesting to dive into. And the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley is a wonderful resource to really tap into different types of life design, mindfulness. They study all and the practice of all. So some really interesting resources to get into there after this session. So I'll hand it over to Carly.
Thanks, Anna. So as we close out today, again, we just want to say thank you for joining us. We didn't have time for questions, but please feel free to reach out. I will add my email in the chat. Anna, if you're comfortable, you can too. If there's any questions that come up about sort of this process, or anything that you have, any feedback you have, we're happy to take it. Additionally, if you did enjoy the sessions over the past 2 weeks, through the Office of Executive Education at Hopkins, we are offering a 5-week academy for emerging leaders. It's beginning this fall. It's the first time we'll run it. We're very excited about it. And the program is it really goes in depth into exploring your leadership strengths, your leadership skills. We're offering weekly 2-hour modules on communication, teamwork, personal finance. We have one-on-one coaching as a part of it, as well as a professional design challenge. So again, first time we're running it, we're very excited about it, and that's happening beginning October 7th. Additionally, the Office of Executive Education offers open enrollment, certificate programs, and academies in courses like this one, human-centered design courses, leadership, management, and finance. So if you're interested in any of the coursework that we offer in executive education, you can find all of it through the Johns Hopkins Executive Education website at the Carey Business School. So that is it for us. Again, from both Anna and myself, we want to say thank you. We did go about 9 minutes over, so we apologize for that. But we want to say thank you. And if you have any questions, any follow-up, any feedback, please feel free to reach out to either Anna or myself. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.